What happens when a quiet man, one who only ever wanted peace, is pushed too far? It starts with something small, just a few wet footprints by the pool. Harmless, right? But what seems like a minor intrusion slowly unravels into a battle of boundaries, manipulation, and the silent fury of someone who has had enough. This isn't the Keanu Reeves you know from the big screen. This is the Keanu who teaches that kindness is not weakness, and that every person has their limit. By the time his neighbors realize who they're messing with, it's already too late. Before we dive in, tell us, where are you watching from? We love seeing your comments light up the map. The Arizona sun hung low, casting long golden streaks over the quiet neighborhood of Chandler. A dry breeze rustled the palm trees as water lapped softly against the edges of a pool, one of the only sounds breaking the silence. Keanu Reeves, now 60, walked slowly around the pool, his faded black t-shirt and worn sandals a quiet testament to a life well lived. Every movement was measured, deliberate. Peace wasn't just something he enjoyed, it was something he had fought for. And this backyard, with its tall walls, neat fences, and carefully tended garden, was his sanctuary. The pool itself was more than just water and tiles. It was a reflection of everything he had worked for: tranquility, solitude, and the right to live on his own terms. As he scrubbed the pool's edge with a brush, a wave of gratitude washed over him. Life had been long and tense, full of highs and lows, but here, in this small corner of the world, he had finally found what he always wanted. Peace, but peace is a fragile thing. And soon he would realize that not everyone respects it. It started on a quiet Saturday. Keanu had just stepped out of the pool when he noticed something strange: wet footprints on the ground, small ones, too small to be his. He frowned. The prints led toward the fence that separated his yard from his neighbor Karen's. A few feet away, one of his pool floaties lay half deflated on the grass. He stood there, staring at it. Maybe it was the wind, maybe an animal, but deep down, he already knew better. That night, he double-checked the gate, reinforced the alarm, but by morning, he had convinced himself he was overthinking things. Maybe it was just an accident. Then, as if on cue, Karen appeared. She leaned casually against the fence, a cup of tea in one hand, dressed in one of those expensive workout outfits worn by people who never actually work out. Her smile was wide, almost rehearsed, but her eyes held something else, a glimmer of entitlement. "Hi, neighbor," she called, her voice just a little too cheerful. "You must be Keanu. I've heard so much about you." Keanu nodded politely. "Morning. My kids were absolutely enchanted by your pool yesterday," she went on, laughing in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes. "They kept calling it a magic lake next door. You know how kids are," she added, waving a hand dismissively. "Sometimes they get carried away. If they caused any mess, just let me know, okay?" Keanu nodded again, absorbing her words. She wasn't apologizing. She was normalizing it. Then, just as she turned away, her voice floated through the slats in the fence, light and sing-song. "They're just kids, Keanu." And she laughed, a sweet, venomous little sound. Keanu stood frozen, watching the water ripple in the pool, the sky shift above, and in that moment, he realized something. His boundaries, his sacred, hard-earned boundaries, were being ignored right in front of his eyes. Little did Karen know, this small splash would be the beginning of the end. By the next morning, the laughter from the day before still echoed in his mind. He sat at the edge of the pool, staring into the still water, thinking. He had spent his life avoiding conflict, valuing silence in a world that rewarded noise. Not because he was weak, but because peace mattered more to him than winning. But peace, as he was starting to learn, only exists when it is respected. That afternoon, he decided to speak with Karen. She was outside, watering a row of perfectly manicured plants, her posture graceful, her movements calculated, like someone who always played to an audience, even when there wasn't one. She didn't even turn her head. "Hi again," she called, voice casual. Keanu stood at the fence, hands in his pockets, calm but firm. "Karen, I need to talk to you about yesterday." "Oh, I know," she cut him off, spinning toward him with that same wide grin. "The boys can be a bit wild, but honestly, Keanu, they're just kids. And you're so lonely in there. I thought maybe it'd be nice for you to hear some laughter for a change." She tilted her head, eyes sparkling with amusement. They jumped into my pool without permission. But they didn't break anything, right? She shot back, her tone almost teasing. Keanu felt something shift inside him. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was disbelief. She wasn't apologizing. She was gaslighting him. Respecting someone's space isn't optional. Karen gave a soft chuckle, shaking her head as if she were speaking to a child who just didn't get it. Keanu, no offense, but you've got this all wrong. She had no idea what was coming next. Such a beautiful pool, and you never even use it. What's the harm in letting a few kids have some fun for an hour? Keanu didn't reply. There was nothing more to say. Over the next week, the visits continued, but now they were bolder. The boys started bringing friends. 4 or 5, sometimes 6 kids at a time flooded into his yard, splashing, screaming, leaving behind crumpled snack wrappers and empty soda cans. One afternoon, he found his pool skimmer snapped in half, discarded like trash. Another day, someone had used his garden hose to spray water through the open windows of his shed. Keanu stayed calm. He reinforced the gate, added a chain, a sturdier lock. But still, the invasions happened. This wasn't just kids being kids anymore. This was lawlessness. He spoke with his neighbors, careful, polite. Some listened. Most smiled awkwardly and shrugged. "That's just Karen," one said. "She's confident." Another, a beer-bellied man in his 40s, laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on, man. You're a big star. What's a few neighborhood kids splashing around? Take it as a compliment." Keanu walked home that evening feeling heavier than he had in years. Not angry. Not yet. What he felt was worse. Moral loneliness. The kind that creeps in when the world around you accepts something wrong and calls it normal. That night, he placed an order. High-definition security cameras, motion-activated, night vision, wide-angle lenses. If no one believed his words, maybe they'd believe footage. He also reinforced the gate one last time. A steel bracket, a custom padlock. Every screw he drilled in felt like an anchor, not just into the wood, but into his right to say, "This is mine. This is enough." When the equipment arrived, Keanu set it up meticulously in silence. A new routine formed. Every night after sunset, he would sit in his living room, sip green tea, and review the recordings. For the first few days, it was exactly what he expected. Kids sneaking in when they thought the yard was empty. Giggling, splashing, tossing things into the garden. Then came the recording that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night. Keanu had just sat down, remote in hand, tired but focused. He sped through the usual footage, kids climbing the fence, silhouettes shifting under the moonlight, until something new caught his eye. A pause. Rewind. Play. Thursday evening. Even before he turned onto his street, he knew something was wrong. Music. Laughter. The unmistakable roar of a crowd where there shouldn't be one. His steps slowed as he neared his driveway. His gate, the one he had locked with care, stood wide open. From behind the tall wooden fence, shadows flickered against the pale walls of his house. Movement. Dancing lights. He wasn't confused. He was stunned. Keanu moved around the side of the house, past the narrow path lined with succulents and cacti. Then he stopped. Dead. In his tracks, his backyard had been turned into a full-blown party. At least 20 people swarmed the space, adults with red Solo cups in hand. Kids running barefoot across the lawn. A man flipping burgers on a grill that wasn't his. The pool sparkled with bodies. Children splashing, teenagers draped across floaties. Music blasted from a Bluetooth speaker he didn't own. And there in his favorite lounge chair, the one perfectly positioned under the shade of the pergola, sat Karen. White bikini. Oversized sunglasses. A glass of wine in her hand, sipping like a queen surveying her summer kingdom. She looked up when she saw him. Smiled, as if they were old friends meeting at a neighborhood barbecue. "Oh, hey, Keanu," she said casually. "You're back early." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Karen continued, completely unbothered. "We figured you wouldn't mind. You never use this place." And with this heat, the kids were just dying for some pool time. It just made sense. Keanu turned, taking it all in. Strangers stepping over his garden. Wet footprints staining the stone path. Greasy smoke from the grill curling above his aloe vera plants. They weren't hesitant. They weren't guilty. They weren't guilty. There was no nervous laughter. No awkward glances. Just confidence. The kind that only comes from people who are absolutely certain they will never face consequences. Keanu opened his mouth, closed it. His throat was dried, not with thirst, but with quiet, simmering disbelief. Without a word, he turned away, walked through the house, locked the front door behind him, and sat on the couch. The sounds of the party filtered in through the windows like an infection. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't move. For hours, the house felt smaller, the walls pressing inward. This wasn't just an invasion of space. It was a betrayal of everything he had earned. Respect, stillness, privacy. Late into the night, the noise finally began to die down. Engines started. Laughter faded. Doors slammed. By the time the last footsteps disappeared, Chandler was quiet again. Keanu's hands trembled slightly. They had thanked her, not him. They had used his home, his peace, his property, and given the credit to her. Worse, they had turned him into a passive character in his own life, a ghost haunting the background of his own story. He stared at the darkened TV screen. His reflection in the glass looked tired, weathered, but something stirred in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Anger, not rage, not violence, a slow, clean, righteous anger. Keanu Reeves had spent decades avoiding conflict. He let the world call him quiet, odd, even reclusive. But there was a line, and Karen had crossed it like it wasn't even there. This wasn't about kids anymore. It wasn't even about Karen. It was about boundaries, decency, and what happens when you push the wrong man too far. Keanu took a deep breath, turned off his phone, picked up a trash bag, and walked outside, methodical, unrushed. It was time to clean up. The next morning, Keanu woke to a sound he hadn't heard in days. Silence. No kids climbing the fence, no splashing, no laughter that didn't belong. He took a deep breath, letting the stillness settle over him like a long-lost friend. Then, footsteps, soft, careful. He turned to his monitor, checking the live feed from his security cameras. There, just outside his gate, stood Karen, alone this time. She wasn't trying to break in, wasn't shouting, wasn't demanding anything. She just stood there. For a long moment, Keanu simply watched. Then slowly, she reached up and taped something to his gate. She hesitated, eyes scanning the yard, the house, as if expecting him to storm out and confront her. He didn't. She turned and walked away, her shoulders tight, her head high. Keanu waited until she was gone, then stepped outside. The paper flapped slightly in the morning breeze. A note. He pulled it off the gate and unfolded it. The handwriting was sharp, almost aggressive. You made your point. Nothing else. No apology, no signature. Keanu exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. Karen hadn't learned a lesson. Not really. But she understood one thing now. There were consequences, and that was enough, for now. Keanu turned back toward the house, taking in his quiet, empty yard. His pool sparkled undisturbed. His chair sat exactly where he left it. No wrappers. No wet footprints. No voices that didn't belong. He stepped inside, locked the door behind him, and poured himself a fresh cup of tea. As the steam curled into the air, he let the moment settle in his chest. This wasn't just about a backyard. This was about respect. And for the first time in a long time, Keanu Reeves felt truly, undeniably at peace. Keanu woke before sunrise. A strange, thick silence blanketed the house, the kind of silence that came before a storm. His phone vibrated, motion detected. He exhaled through his nose, calm but ready. The monitor flickered to life. The footage was dark, but the motion-activated floodlights snapped on, illuminating the intruder. Karen. She wasn't alone this time. Two men stood with her, their faces tense, their movements cautious. Keanu watched as they surveyed the fence, whispering among themselves. One of them pulled something from his pocket, a set of bolt cutters. Keanu's jaw tightened. They weren't just testing boundaries anymore, they were trying to erase them. He didn't call the police. Not yet. Instead, he pressed another button on his security system. A piercing alarm shattered the silence. The men jumped back. Karen flinched but didn't run. She had made it too far to back down now. Keanu stepped outside, his presence quiet but undeniable. Barefoot, in black sweatpants and a loose hoodie, he looked almost unassuming, but his eyes, steel. Walk away, he said, his voice steady. Karen turned to face him, fists clenched. You don't own this neighborhood. No, Keanu agreed, stepping closer, but I own this house, and you don't. One of the men shifted nervously. The other looked at Karen, waiting for her next move. Keanu tilted his head slightly. You know, he continued. There's something about people like you. Karen stiffened. You mistake access for ownership. Just because you could take something doesn't mean it was ever yours. He pointed toward the security camera mounted above the gate. Now you're on video. Breaking and entering, trespassing, attempted vandalism. Should I keep going? One of the men swore under his breath. The other turned to Karen. This ain't worth it, he muttered. I'm out. Karen's nostrils flared, coward. But the second man was already backing away. Keanu didn't move, didn't break eye contact. You crossed a line, Karen. You didn't just test it, you set it on fire. Her breath hitched, but she masked it with another sneer. And what are you going to do about it? Keanu raised his phone. Let the cops decide. Her eyes widened just slightly. The bravado cracked for half a second. She turned on her heel and stalked away, leaving the remaining man scrambling after her. Keanu didn't stop them. He didn't have to. By morning, the entire neighborhood had seen the footage. By afternoon, Karen's house had a for sale sign in front of it. By the end of the week, she was gone. Keanu never said a word to her again. But as he sipped his tea on the patio, watching the clear, undisturbed water of his pool, he knew one thing. She would remember, and she would never mistake his silence for weakness again.